How much cash should you have in the bank? Well, it's very personal, but in this particular episode, we walk you through all the things you need to think about.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from the Secure Your Retirement podcast. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, then hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications by hitting the bell so you receive alerts when each episode comes out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone, to Secure Your Retirement podcast. Merce and I today are going to talk about a topic that we get asked about all the time. And ultimately, it comes down to this idea of how much cash should I have in the bank or in my money market, wherever it might be, but just cash, not invested anywhere. And I just to give a little bit of background on this, and then, Merce, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this as we get started on it. But you know, this all kind of comes back to, I think, this idea of when we're working, a lot of financial planners would tell people you need to have 6 months of income as far as in savings. And that made sense because if you think about it, if I'm working and I've got a job and I lose my job, the idea would be if I've got 6 months of cash in the bank, I could then go find another job and I have time there, like accessible money. And so it made sense to think about it that way. But most of our clients are good savers. They're way down the road of not just working for paycheck by paycheck. They've actually got savings in place. And many of them are getting close to, or if not already in retirement. So now that poses the question, how should people think about that then? And I will tell you, it's all over the place. I mean, we have some people who have a tremendous amount of cash, and we have some people who are very happy not to have so much cash because they don't like the earnings on it. So let's just get this conversation started and kind of talk a little bit about this idea, because we talk about having a cash bucket. We think you should have cash, but you know, how do we think about this?
Yeah, so I think it's important to kind of think through the last few years that we've lived through. So we sit here in 2026 with interest rates continuously being a topic of conversation in the media. And, you know, 2021, coming out of the pandemic, that's when the Fed started to raise rates. And then 22 and 23 and 24, rates got to a pretty high point, historically high point that we haven't seen in quite some time, to where you could park your cash in the bank in a money market and earn 5% without doing anything. FDIC, it's covered, it's secure, and on top of that, it's going to make 5%. A pretty attractive scenario, right? We haven't seen that in decades. And then your CDs were also very attractive, and they haven't been attractive at all since, you know, for the longest time. And your CDs, if you, were to tie up money for 6 months to 12 months, 18 months, you could lock in a even better rate, somewhere closer to 5.5% to 6% at the peak of that interest rate cycle. Well, I think people have gotten comfortable with having cash in the bank, and the problem is, the thing that we need to be thinking about is, well, how much cash is too much cash in the bank, especially as it begins to become ineffective, right? We're starting to see rates drop down. I think one of the better money markets today that if to look at, is probably paying 3 to 3.25% at the time of this recording. And so we're going to continuously see the rates start to drop down. Your CDs aren't any better than the money market rates in most cases. And so, what are we supposed to do? And we want to have this balance of, well, there is an element of comfort to having accessibility and having cash in the bank. But, a lot of people went a little bit heavy in cash in the banks because of how good the rates are. And so the conversation really becomes, well, what do we do now that rates are declining? It's not as effective or not as fruitful as it was a couple years ago. What do we do? So, let's just talk, Raiden, a little bit about the risk, I guess, that we could talk about of overloading this cash bucket. You guys have heard us talk about buckets all the time, and we'll talk more about that too. But one of those buckets is cash. So let's talk a little bit about the risk of having too much over there, Raiden.
Yeah, I think that I think there's some good reasons to have a good cash bucket. A lot of times people might think about, well, I want enough cash that I can live on it for this year, and I don't have to worry about the volatility. I don't have to worry about what's going on in the stock market. I'll just use this money and let the markets do what the markets do. And there's good about that. But here's the problem. Cash creates a couple of issues. One, I might not be able to get as good a return, especially now with those rates that have come down. But worse than that to me is that sometimes people go, well, I'm going to put this money in a CD, or I'm going to put this money in the bank. And we have had clients, who've had sizable amounts of cash, and it generates a taxable income. Whether I need the money or not, whether I take the money or not, I'm going to have to pay taxes on the interest that's earned as ordinary income tax. And the problem with that is now that reduces my amount of return that I got on it. And in addition to that, I can create other problems. I might affect my taxes when it comes to IRMAA, when it comes to my Medicare problems. If I've got a good amount of cash and it's just earning money that I don't need, that could be a really sensitive issue. I think the other thing is that I think when we look at the overall plan, many times we'll say, well, what if we earned 4% over the next 30 years versus even 4.5% or 5%? It could make $1 million, $2, $3 million, depending on the size of the account, difference over a 30-year period. So really, we don't want to have more cash than what we feel that we absolutely need in there. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know about you, Merce, if you've got anything else to say on that.
Yeah, I think to add to that, you've got something also, while we've been living through this interest rate cycle of it going up, 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 and then now steadily coming down, we've also gone through this inflationary cycle that's been unique and kind of unheard of because of the things that were done during the pandemic and supply chains being interrupted and everything like that. Costs went tremendously up. And, depending on who you talk to, inflation is still an issue that we're dealing with here in 2026. And so if our cash is not growing at the rate of inflation, our cash effectively is losing money in all essence. It's not buying what it used to buy. It's not keeping up with, it's not maintaining our buying power. So having too much in a bucket that's underperforming is going to affect our ability to spend as we kind of think through what retirement's going to look like for us. The other part of it is, and we've heard this story so many times, right? Go back to 2008, go back to, any market issue where, investors have had enough and they just say, nope, I can't handle it. I'm going to get out. I'm going to get on the sidelines. I'm going to put my money in money markets and CDs, and just at least I won't have stress. And I'll get back in when it makes sense to get back in. And the problem is that we never get back in, and the opportunity cost of not getting reinvested into the markets. I mean, take the last 5 or 6 years from a market perspective. Let's say you got out during the pandemic in 2020. You said, the world is falling apart. I want to put my money in cash. I want it to be secure. Well, 2020 ended up being a double-digit market year. 21, a double-digit market year. 22 had some issues where money was lost, but 23, 24, and 25, all double-digit market years. So, you think about the opportunity cost of remaining in cash for whatever reason and not having that plan in place to redeploy, get back in, that, again, could speak to millions of dollars depending on the size of the account that we missed out on. So I think those are two big ones that we don't want to ignore. So Raiden, let's talk a little bit then about like the three buckets that we talk about, because it does address cash, but it also does address this idea of safety and still making money and a return in a safe manner that's going to be better than what banks can provide. So let's dive into those categories a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we always are talking about three buckets. We got a cash bucket, we've got an income safety bucket, and we got a growth bucket. So we believe in having some cash in the bank. And I think sometimes people say, well, how much cash should I have? And I say that comes a little bit down to your comfort level. But I think the real question of what people are asking is, how much money should I have that's not got market volatility to it? And that's what we're going to talk about here in these two buckets. So we definitely believe you should have some cash in the bank. And really the way I look at it is short-term needs. So if I look at things and think, hey, this year I've got a car I'm going to buy, I've got an addition I'm going to do on the house, or I've got a wedding I'm going to pay for. We got a couple clients right now that are going through that, and I'm taking care of these weddings. That's going to up the amount of cash that we might need for the year. If I think I've got something big coming, yeah, let's raise some cash, have it there in the bank, not invest it, not put it in anything that would limit my liquidity. so I can take care of those things. So many times what we're doing when we do our financial planning strategy meetings is we're kind of looking at what's the need for the year. And when we look at what the need is for the year, what kind of things do we have coming about? If it's just normal income needs, not a big deal. We can take that from our income safety bucket. If it is a big ticket item, I might need to raise my cash level. So I'm going to come back to cash bucket is really kind of personal. Some clients want 50, 60,000. Some clients want 200, 300,000. Do I believe that we should have that much in cash? Not unless I got something really about to happen. I'm about to go buy a house somewhere. About to go do a buy-in over at a CCRC, a continuous care retirement community. Those are reasons to have higher amounts of cash. Outside of those kind of things, I want my money working for me. But that takes us to bucket number two. So bucket number two, which is the income safety bucket. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that might settle the nerves when it comes around this idea of market volatility.
Right. The reason people keep so much in cash outside of a specific purpose, like buying a house or down payment on a house or car purchase, is, well, the comfort that comes with it, the lack of stress that comes with having cash in the bank. Well, if there's a way to do that and can maintain that comfort and still have the ability to earn a decent rate of return, well, I think most people would opt for that. And so we call that the income and safety bucket. We call it the income side of it is, well, we want the majority of our cash flow needs coming from this bucket. So if I need $5,000 a month and I'm only receiving $3,000 from Social Security, I want the other two coming in from a place that's not subject to volatility, not subject to downside risk, so that when we're making out these long-term plans, we know where our cash flow is coming from for a certain period of time. Probably not where it's coming from forever, but for a good chunk of time, we know exactly where we're drawing the money from. That solves a lot of issues when it comes to financial planning and long-term investment planning. But that's part one, is that it's going to provide the income that we need, that Social Security or a pension is not going to cover all of, right? The safety part of it is, well, we want something that's going to still give us that comfort and that reliability and that predictability. Something that is not associated with the stock market in the sense of the ups and downs of the stock market. Something that can give us a bond-like or better rate of return without even the risk of the bond market. I say that because in 2022 and 2021, the bond markets had tremendous issues. They lost the aggregate bond index is kind of like the S&P 500 of the bond world, lost almost as much as the general stock market did. And that blew people's minds, right? I'm in bonds for safety, and all of a sudden my bonds lost 10% in a year. Right. So if there's a place where we can get principal protection and a bond-like return or better, I would put that in the category of, say, 4 to 8% over a 10-year period. That is a place now where we can have decent growth, but also the reliability of our withdrawal strategy coming into play. And what that allows for now is that, well, we can, if we've got, just picture that for a second. If we've got our cash flow needs figured out for, say, the next 5, 10, 15 years, well, we've got a ton of opportunity now on the other side, which is where true growth happens. And it just so happens we call that the growth bucket. Let's talk a little bit about the growth bucket and now how those two interact together, Aiden.
Yeah, the idea behind the growth bucket is we are trying to go for bigger long-term rates of return. We are taking some risk on in that bucket. And so we're going to have some potential volatility in that bucket. But that bucket over a period of years, let's call it 10 years, 5 to 10 years, should perform really, really well. And so we do have things in there like stocks. We have exchange traded funds. We have some alternative investments that we'll invest in, things that like private investments. We'll have those types of things that we're going to invest in. But if I've got my cash bucket and my income safety bucket, and the markets go through a little bit of volatility, and all my income that I need is coming in, that for my fund, for my essential needs, I don't have to worry so much when that growth bucket's going through a little bit of a cycle, which the markets go through. There's nothing we can do to stop it. There's going to be periods where the markets are just ripping and roaring, and there's going to be periods when the market's going to have volatility in it. And sometimes that's very short term. Sometimes that's a little bit longer term. But if I've got my income needs taken care of for the next few years, I can live through pretty heavy market cycles, and I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed about it because I know that I'm going to allow that bucket to come back. I'm not going to have that bucket be down when I need to get access to the cash. So when you think about that 3-bucket strategy, my cash, my income, safety, and my growth bucket, and I marry those together, I have a really good, sound plan. And that's why we say it's going to provide peace of mind. I'm going to have peace of mind because I'm not worried about any layer of what I'm going to need for retirement. But I think we've covered this pretty good, Merce, to wrap this up a little bit. I mean, any closing remarks, just kind of talking a little bit about how this reduces stress or helps us deal with the stress?
Yeah, I think, bottom line, going back to the title of our podcast today, how much cash is too much cash? Well, I think it's a very subjective question, and there is no definite answer that's going to solve for all families. I think every family is going to have a different answer based off of their goals, based off of what their year is going to look like. But bottom line is we want to get away from this place of keeping too much cash in a place that's not operating as good as it was a couple years ago. But the only way you do that is you find strategies and plans. And this is where we talk about financial planning and how the financial plan really drives the ability to make good decisions when it comes to our withdrawals, when it comes to taxation, tax strategies. Also, our investment philosophy is very much tied to our financial plan. So everything, and how we operate revolves around that. I tell people all the time when they come on as a new client, the first thing they're going to do is have their personalized planning meeting where we build out their retirement-focused financial plan that says, hey, here's where you are right now. And here's all the things that we need to think about, like how we want to live, how we're going to spend, Medicare, Social Security, the withdrawal structure and everything in between. And how all of this plays out in over a 30, 40-year timeline. Once you see that, then you start to understand, well, yeah, this could really work. I could retire and I could have a very nice retirement if I have all the pieces in place. And a big part of that is having an investment strategy that you're comfortable with, that aligns with the amount of risk that you want to take, and that is optimized for withdrawing when it's time to withdraw, but also for long-term growth, because we need that as well. So that's really, I think, the purpose of the episode today is just to shine some light on, well, cash isn't as effective as it was a couple years ago. If you've got a lot of money in cash and you don't really have a good reason, it may be worth a conversation at this point. So if you have questions or anything like that, we're always happy to have a conversation. Easiest way is to hop to our website, pomwealth.net. And from there, you'll be able to schedule a phone call with one of our advisors, and we're happy to have those conversations and see where that leads.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
If you would like to find more information about Peace of Mind Wealth Management, we invite you to visit our website at pomwealth.net. If you go to the contact page and contact us, we'll send you a free copy of our book, The Peace of Mind Pathway. It lays out our process from beginning to end. Please visit our website.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.